right, welcome everyone to the Winter Wolf watercolor painting. You need 9 by 12 watercolor paper if you have it, or whatever you have available. That'll work too. If you don't have watercolors, you can certainly use acrylic paint. It'll just look different. You can use colored pencils. You'll just have to sort of, figure out for yourself where, what you're doing with the different medium. But you're always welcome to come to class, even if you don't have the correct supplies. It's just so good to see you here. So we're going to start with the drawing first. And I've mentioned in the chat, if you have some paint, white paint to add to your watercolor painting, that would be great. If you don't, that's okay. You can also use salt if you want. If you have salt, I love salt on watercolor paintings. So if you have that, you can add that too. And if not, it's fine just the way it is. So let's get started here. I'm going to move this up and adjust my camera here. All right. And I apologize, my desk is a mess. If you were to see around me, you would see how much of a mess everything else is too. But I am working on finishing up the summer program, so I'm really excited about that. I've got about one more week left, and I will spotlight some of those in the newsletter, give you a sneak peek on those. And if you have anything to add to that, let me know. Like if you have any other ideas, I can whip something up for the summer programming. All right, so we are going to draw our wolf first. And basically this is how I did this. I drew the wolf, and then everything else, I really just used the paint. But if you feel more comfortable drawing out where you want to put your like your forest, I do have to say for this one, I've got some really light patterns of more trees that I wanted to add to this. And I ended up not doing it, but I never erased it. But I did start to do, add some more in with pencil. So anyway, let's get started on the actual wolf part here. And we're going to start at the bottom of our paper. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this all on screen at the same time. For some reason, oh, there we go. Okay. So at the bottom, we're basically going to do a shape as if, we're going to be doing the fur kind of coming out like this. You want to make sure that you are drawing lightly. I always draw darker so you're able to see it on Zoom. And I'm just going to adjust one more time. And so we know that we're going to go down to the bottom, but we are actually going to start off at the tip of the nose here. So coming at the top of your page, but going down a little bit, we're going to draw the nose area. And so here is the nose, and we're going to get into the top of the head. And we can even draw, a bit of the shape of the nose as well. And I'm going to go closer and straighten out a little bit so that it's not so much at an angle for you. So that's the tip of the nose. We can add the eye that is shut, like so. And then we are going to start creating the fur that is coming out. And so here again, you are welcome to draw at least some of the fur. You can add in more, but basically we're going to be going down to all the way to the bottom of our page. So it's going to kind of look like a Christmas tree almost. And again, you want to make sure that this is very light because you want to be able to erase it and also paint over it at some point. So once you have this section done, we're now going to create the other side. And so we start to go outward. And then again, you know, continuing to work downward with your fur, kind of spanning out a bit. This just gives you an idea of about where you want the fur to go. And again, you know, going all the way down to the bottom. And then we're also going to be creating the ear. And the ear, we want to get that shape like so. And on the inside, we'll be creating fur like that. So the other thing about the ear is if you notice this one and along with the fur, you can see that I've gone back and actually drawn in fur with the paint, and that's what we're going to do. The same with the ear. So I made the shape of the ear, the whole shape, but what you might want to do is go back and start to add some sort of shading or curved lines like this to indicate that the ear is going to look more fluffy and furry. I also like to have a little bit of a break with the head about right here on the left, where there's sort of a big patch of fur here. And then it takes a little bit of a break. So I kind of went back and changed this a little bit so that, you know, there'll be more fur coming here. And remember, we're going to make curved lines all throughout. But if you feel more comfortable, as I mentioned earlier, drawing those in, so you would actually kind of very lightly draw in these lines. So instead of this being paint, for now, it would look like this. And then you would paint, you know, on top of it. So here again, you know, I sometimes will do it lightly, but I also like to kind of go with the flow. But I'm just showing you maybe the direction that you might want to add some of the fur shapes in. So something like that. And if that helps you, um, you know, again, feel free to do that. But before we do it, we will take some time to just lightly lighten up our pencil. And then once we have that, we're going to start in and create our forest. And those are really going to just be, you know, lines. And if you want, you can make them double lines of how your forest is going to look. So very light trees, some in the background, you know, but the rest of it, we really just do with the paint. So all of the shading and all of that, we're going to do that with the paint. But if you would like right now to start adding in some of your branches or even all of them, if you want to take the time to do that, please do. I like to do a combination of both. You know, adding some in, and then when I get to the paint, adding more in or changing it a little bit. So when you're ready, you can lighten up all of your lines if you've used your pencil a lot. And what that just means is taking your eraser and literally going on top of your lines and lightly erasing on them. You still want to be able to see them, but you want to also have them be lighter since this is watercolor. So you're going to see that mine looks like it's now disappearing. And I'm going to go even closer so you can see. So they're just light enough that I can see them. But they won't interrupt with my painting. And the thing is with the wolf, he's white. So we're not going to be using our white paint, although you can if you were able to find some white acrylic paint, you can actually use that for the wolf. I've used it only for the snow and in the background, but I was just thinking, you know, you could use it for the wolf as well. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to start finally painting the background. So our drawing portion is done for now. The other thing that you might want to add, I forgot to mention this, is I've had people when they do this, they actually add a moon in the background. So I'm going to do that now. I never thought to do that, but I just taught this to teens about 2 months ago, and one of the teens added a moon, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. I don't know why I never thought about that a wolf would be howling at the moon. So I'm going to add this little moon back here in my painting, and you're welcome to do so as well. So just a little circle. You can, oh, whoops, let me move that down a little. All right. And then, so now we really want to start mixing our blues. And I'm going to show you, this is a combination of two blues. So basically, I'm just using a plain Crayola pack, and I use this blue for some of it, but for the first parts of the blue, the darker parts, I use blue and black, a combination. So let's mix that blue and black combination. And if some of you may have a better set, like I can see John Paul probably has a really nice watercolor set with lots of colors. If you've got something like that and you already have those kind of colors, you can do that too. Another thing is some people use watercolor pencils, which are nice. So you can do a combination with your watercolor pencils as well. And if you don't want to do them blue and you want to add some purple, feel free to do that too. But I'm just going to be showing you how to mix the blues that I got. So I'm adding that blue, which comes out more almost like a turquoise with Crayola. And then I mix my black in, and you can see that it's gotten darker. And that's kind of the color I want. And I don't remember if I haven't looked at the chat. I think I started to write, or I think I did put, if you have another brush besides this one. This one is a size 10. If you have something like a 10 or an 8 or even a 6, this will be like your bigger brush where you're going to do the bigger parts of the painting. And then if you have a smaller brush, This one just came with the set, and it looks to be about maybe a size 2, 3, or 4. If you've got another smaller brush that has a little more of a point, you can grab that at some point as well. But for now, we're just going to be using the bigger brush, and yours might be where you can actually use the point and it's fine. And maybe you don't have to switch brushes. So, all right, let me move this. And so what we're going to do is go in the background, and we're going to start to kind of paint around. Sorry, let me fix my thing again. Ah, yes, thank you, John Paul. Sorry about that. I realized I was not on the screen as well as I thought I was. And getting the other one on too. So let me go up a little bit with my camera and move over. Okay, so we're gonna start right up against our wolf. And this is where you want to start adding in some of the blue in the fur. So if you see what I'm doing, I'm coming from the outside and going inward. This is just sort of the edge of the fur. Ah, move to the left. Okay. Better? Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so I'm using that blue, and I'll probably get a little darker even at some point, but I want to get in the edge. I'm gonna go around on the other side and I'm sort of outlining almost. And we can always go a little bit thinner with the fur, but for right now, I want to add in that fur feeling. And then we're going to start going into the sky, the rest of the sky. And we're going to be building up the color first using more water to make it lighter. And we're going to be going over the trees. So if you've drawn your trees, we're going to be covering everything. We want to create like a smoky sky. And so I'm going to dip into my water. And I'm going to start creating swirls. So I dip into my water to make it light, and I'm creating almost like cloudy swirls, and it looks very light. And I want to do it all around, making sure I go around the moon. And then, we're going to keep going and adding darker paint. But for now, we kind of create this light swirling sky. So you can see, I went right on top of my trees. And I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. It's a very light blue. Now it depends how light you want it. Maybe you want a little darker, but we're going to start adding more darks. With watercolor, it's really hard to go from dark to light. So we start off with light first, and that means more water. So this is water and blue. you know, the same blue that I showed you that I mixed. And this is our first layer. And I'm just going in circles to kind of create a smokiness. And you can see where some of it's starting to dry a little bit. And we're going to start adding another layer, which is going to be a lighter blue, which for me, and if you're using Crayola, is just the straight blue from here. And it looks more kind of like a little bit of a turquoise-ish. And I'm going to add that. Oops. Going to start adding that in swirls too. And so what you can start to do is you can keep swirling, adding little spots of swirls. And it'll give you that dappled effect. Like, see what I've done here is I would sort of dot my paper, kind of going in swirls and then kind of almost dotting it together. So it's, you know, working it up. The background. And then we're going to start adding in some more of the darker blue again. And here is where if you want to add purple, you could even add purple if you wanted. I did not add any purple to this. Although I should say, I think I mixed some purple and blue together. Later on. Oops, I almost covered up my moon. Oops. I forgot about my little moon over there at the top. So you can see how it's starting to come together a little bit, where we keep adding layers. And you're going to let that dry just a little bit. And I'm going to mix a little more of the blue. Yeah, so I did, when I was teaching the teens, I did one that kind of looked like this. So this is kind of completely different than my original, but we were kind of having fun and kind of experimenting. So you can see I actually did the trees in purple, and I kind of like that. So I may add a little bit of purple to my branches as well, for this one. I like that, you know, blue and purple combination. And you can see that there's even, this is a purple blue, along the edges of the fur. So I did that for this one that I taught, you know, or you can keep it blue. You can even add some red if you wanted, which is going to make purple, but okay, so we're going to keep going now. But now we're going to switch to the darker blue. And again, remember that darker blue, if you're using Crayola, or if you have darker blue, you can use that too. I did a combination of the Crayola blue with the black. And now, again, I'm creating some darker areas now to go on top. So I'm doing a combination of swirling and kind of going a little closer together, especially when it comes to going down to the bottom half of um, the watercolor. So what I mean by that is I'm now taking some of that blue and I'm kind of pushing it down a little more so that it's a little more solid here at the bottom half. And I'm going to start doing that on the other side as well. And then what we're also going to do is outline our wolf a little more after this dries a little bit. Okay, so I'm adding more of the darker color here on the right side. And a little bit up in the sky. And we're going to let that dry a little bit. And we're going to start on the inside of the wolf. So this is where if you wanted to switch brushes to a smaller, finer brush, if you have it, you could do that now. So again, this is a round brush, which means it's pointy at the end, but you can see the difference in shape, or I'm sorry, in size. So I'm going to switch to the smaller brush to do some more of the fur. Now I don't have to because I do have a very pointy, bigger brush and that will help. And if you are able to do that, you can stay with this brush. But I think I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. Another trick I wanted to kind of show you was if your brush, and I know I've shown this before, but I'm going to show it again. If your brush is not staying with the point, you can wet your brush with water. And then on a flat surface, I like to use maybe like the paper towel. You press you've wet your brush, so it's a little bit wet. And you press it or lay it up against the paper towel. And I'm going to roll and pull it towards me, almost like I'm dragging it. And then the point is going to get pointier. So you can do that. It doesn't have to be on a paper towel. It can be, I'm going to do it over here. And so I'm rolling it and pulling it at the same time. And that's going to, every time your point starts to kind of flare out, you can do that. You can do it when you have paint on it. You just kind of, and it looks a little more like this, when I'm doing it quickly. It takes a little getting used to the motion of it because you can see that my fingers are moving to make the brush move. All right, so anyway, we're now going to let's start with the ear. I like to, again, use that darker blue. So I'm going to get into that. And I'm going to start, it's still a little bit light, and I'm going to go back and make it darker. But I'm just kind of retracing around the lines that I originally put in. And then I'm going to start making wavy fur lines.
If I'm adding white acrylic, would now be when I do that?
Yeah, yeah, that would be really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and we're going to be adding that for the background as well. And I'm thinking we could even do it for the moon if you have, if you have the white acrylic. So again, I'm taking the blue, and for now, I was going to start off with it dark. Some of it's a little bit dark, but I'm kind of adding in some light curves of it. You can see that it's very light. Sometimes I bunch it, I kind of go in a bunch. And then we're going to go back in and make it darker. So by adding in the blue on the white, the blue is acting like the shadow of the fur. And if you take a look at a dog, or I guess a wolf with white fur, take a closer look, and you can see that there's a shadow. There are shadows underneath defining the the fur. I mean, it's like that for any color dog, but with white, you can use the absence of color for the white if you don't have, white paint, like what we're doing here with watercolor. But that's why we are going to add some of the white paint if you have it. So now I want to make sure, that I've got enough of these lighter lines. And now we're going to go back in and we're going to darken up our blue so that it is a little darker. So here I am mixing my black with my blue even more. And you can see it's a lot darker than I was using before. And we can go start off on the outside of the wolf and start to sort of outline it. But the way we're outlining, because it's furry, is we're sort of adding fur strokes as we're following along the edge. I gotta mix some more paint here. Okay. The other thing is if you use more paint and less water, which is what I'm also starting to do, you're gonna get an even darker blue. So you can see now that it's getting darker. I'm gonna now start to outline up where the nose is, and that's going to lead me into the other side of the wolf. So you can see I'm making, curved strokes for the fur going all along the edge. And I'm going to start transferring that to the inside of the wolf. It's really rather a simple drawing, I feel like, or painting. Um, I think it's kind of fun to experiment. And then we want to make sure to go inside the ear and to make that a little bit dark. We are going to add a little bit of lightness around it, but for now, let's go inside the ear, and then you can also outline a little more on the actual ear itself. Add a little more dark here. And then you're going to start to add some darker fur. And again, I do that by adding more black and then wispy, very wispy strokes. So here I am adding in, I really mixed my blue with my black. And now I'm taking the really fine tip of my brush and I'm adding in some more finer strokes for the fur. And you can also go back, along the edge, going up against your fur and making it a little dark around the edge, almost like a shadow around your wolf. Kind of along the sky area. And then we're going to start to get into our trees. And then we'll go back and, add some white. So the other thing that I forgot to mention, we have to do the nose and also the eye. The nose, I did the blue, but I think I want to add a little bit of black to it. So the way I do the nose is I leave a little bit of sort of a drop of white, meaning I'm going to go in really close. You see how I left that little sliver of white? That's just the white of the paper, but again, you can go back using white paint. And as far as the eye, I use black. And I go in very lightly. And I don't use a lot of white. I don't use a lot of water at all. I think I am going to add some black to the nose on top of the blue. I'm going to go hover a little more over there we go. I might add a little bit of some black in the ear. Just to give it a little more contrast. And the other thing that I've done in the bottom portion um, of the wolf is add a little bit of some of water down some of the fur to kind of create some light shading. And then I go back and add a little more darker fur. But I, like to add a little bit of blue on the fur by I just added a little bit of water and I smoothed out the bottom of the wolf. And I've since switched to my bigger brush because then you also want to start going around your moon. Oops, which I have to go up here. And the color that I'm using for around the moon is a little bit of that bluish black. And I'm now just taking water and I'm sort of taking that water and mixing in with the color that's already on there a little more, of making it a little more solid, just a little bit. So again, I'm just kind of taking water and smoothing out some of the dots that we created earlier and getting ready to start painting the trees, which again, I'll show the original again is, a lot of the versions of the same blues that we've been using, the darker blue, combination of the darker blue, but lighter blue in the background. And again, you can add some purple if you like, but let's start off. And again, I'm going to switch my brush to my smaller brush. And so I'm going to add the ones in the background first, which are more of a, lighter blue. And so these in the background are going to be very faint. So I'm going to take my brush, and here also you can start to add white in, and we will add that as well. But I'm going to take my brush and basically I'm going to hold it like this with the tip down, barely touching the paper. And there's my first branch or tree. And I'm going to make some more of those little lines. And sometimes they're going to be a little shorter, so I'm not going to go all the way up, to the moon. And I'm going to start to do the same thing on the other side as well. So see, they kind of look whispery. Right now, I'm just kind of making lines going all the way up, and then we can add our branches. But you can make ones of different lengths. You can make them a little bit shorter and kind of starting in the middle of your page here, and they almost look like ghost trees. They're very light kind of lines. And it gives the impression that it's a forest and there are trees coming out at different levels. Like, there's maybe some obviously grass in the behind there. And when you're satisfied with how light they are, you can now start to get darker. And again, we will go back and add some white paint as well if you have it. So I'm going to start to get darker now. Oops. So same idea. And I'm going to start adding branches now. And getting on the other side. And just have fun with the branches, you know, the twigs overlapping, the trees overlapping. Ooh, John Paul, that looks awesome. It doesn't take much, right? Oh, wow, very nice. Doesn't take much to fill up your background in this tip, you know, painting. Um, and when you are ready, you can switch to white, the white paint. And I like to sort of dot it on in the background for snow. You can add it to the leaves by taking it and kind of chunking it on. Can you kind of see that, what I've done here? See how I've done that? The other thing too, again, you can add it to your wolf. You can even add it, you know, to the edge. Here I am adding it to the edge of his, you know, I made, you know, parts of it dark, but now I'm going back in and I'm adding the white paint. And it's kind of giving it another level. It's nice. So I'm doing a few things. I'm kind of dotting on the snow in the sky. I'm adding it to some of the branches, mostly at the top. I added it a little bit to my moon. And I'm even going to add it kind of around it to make it a little bit kind of glowy. So I'm just taking the white and I'm kind of dotting it around the moon in the sky area. You can add clouds if you want. So maybe I'm going to add a little bit of kind of some cloud coverage. Again, right near the moon. And I'm going to add a little bit of white to his nose. So this also gives it a little bit of texture too. think it's really fun to add the white paint. Like I said, I mostly add it along the edges, the outline. You can always go back, and you can add it inside. So I am going to kind of go back in toward the bottom where I added the blue and just add a little more white to give it a little more dimension. You can kind of, I think you can see that on the screen. You can see the chunks of white paint. Right there. And here again, I'm going to add some more in the sky. And on the trees. Be a little in his ears. Make him look fluffy. He's a fluffy wolf. As I guess most of them are. And you can even go back and if you want to add some more dark, you can add some more black. You can even add it mixed with, oops, I accidentally went right in my watercolor with my acrylic paint. I guess you could also mix that too. As Bob Ross would say, that was a happy accident. All right. Yep, I'm going to make his nose just a little bit darker, adding some more black. Just a little bit. Maybe in his ear. And then if you want, you can even go back on the branches. You can get a little darker towards the bottom if you want. I'm using some black here. Again, you don't have to. That's just my preference. Sometimes it's kind of fun to add a little dark branch kind of peeking in through the sky here. Doing that right here. For some reason I was just thinking of Little Red Riding Hood. I guess I was thinking of the wolf. Here again, if you want to do anything darker, go back and paint anything a little darker. I'm kind of doing that just right at the edge here of where the wolf starts at the bottom. Just adding a little bit of shading right here at the bottom, using the blue, and on the side of the forest. But again, you don't have to. I just wanted to kind of add that. I thought that looked kind of interesting with a little bit dark blue kind of in the bottom area. On either side. I feel like it gives it a little bit of a background or a little more of one. That. I might add a little bit around the moon. And a little more on the moon. A little bit of blue. Oh my gosh, Maura, that's gorgeous. Is that all acrylic? That is beautiful. I'm gonna stop
Yeah,
the.
I didn't have watercolors, and I also do really bad every time I follow you with watercolors and get frustrated because I mess it up.
That's
So
okay.
I
Most
was
people
like,
do.
oh, I have a canvas board and I have acrylics. I'll follow along.
Oh my gosh, I love it in acrylic. You're making me rethink this project for like the future. I really like that.
I had some trouble with it being a canvas board because I don't usually use canvas board. So
Yeah.
I had to kind of work with paint a little differently than when I did the canvas the other day when we did the mountain with the
Yeah.
flowers. So
Yeah.
it didn't flow the same way. So it kind of threw me off at first, but then I really like how it ended up coming out.
I was gonna say it's beautiful. I know what you mean. I switched to canvas boards because I have so many projects and we have a small place. And honestly, it's like there's just so many places I can just put stuff. So
Yeah.
I had to start piling stuff. And the thing that made sense was boards. So that's why I switched a lot of the projects to the canvas boards. But you're right, they're a little drier than.
Yeah, it kind of absorbed the paint faster. So I wasn't
Yeah.
really expecting that because I usually use the canvas because I have canvas and canvas board shoved in my closet.
Mhm.
So before I was like, oh, okay, canvas, it just kind of smooths out.
Yeah.
This is like you kind of have a more scruffy brush. No matter how much paint you put on there, it's like
Yeah,
scruffing.
it is.
So you get a totally different texture, which is really interesting.
It is. I've kind of gotten used to it. Um and yours looks really beautiful. It looks like that you might be able to get used to it too. It's just beautiful the
I
way the
think it
trees are
actually
going.
worked really well for the wolf because it really
Yeah.
worked for the fur.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I just want to spotlight it just to show everybody. I'm going to stop the recording. I forgot to stop the recording.